The other thing that Yanez did really well was the rookies. I mean, they have Alexa Barr, Emma Sears, and then they brought in Raylan Turner. 4 goals and 3 assists between the 3 of them to start the season. That was one of racing's big issues last season.
Are we going to be ready for the dip and to make sure that we can bring it back up to where it needs to be so that at 2031, all eyes are back on the U.S. and this is the place to be?
Welcome back into Straight from the Pitch. It has been a minute, but we are super excited to be back because, wow, has it been a very fun first 7 weeks in the NWSL, and obviously some major breaking news out of U.S. soccer and Mexico this week. We're going to dive right into it. Alongside Scotty Schweitzer, I'm Anna Witte. Thank you so much for joining us here on Straight from the Pitch. U.S. Soccer and Mexico have dropped their bid to host the 2027 Women's World Cup. It was announced earlier this week that they want to focus more on an equitable bid for the 2031 tournament. The statement that U.S. Soccer put out said they wanted to learn from the 2026 Men's World Cup that will happen in the United States. And the 2 remaining bidders left now that the U.S. and Mexico are out is going to be Brazil and a joint bid between Belgium, Germany, and Netherlands. Huge announcement this week. U.S. Soccer, they were really all about this Women's World Cup. I felt like they were really campaigning for it, advertising for it, and now they're dropping. Scotty, was this the right decision for U.S. Soccer in Mexico?
I'm going to go it was, only because I think a lot of times we're not privy to information and we never find out that information. But I got a feeling that U.S. Soccer, Mexican Federation, got word somewhere, maybe through FIFA, that it would be better off for them to make their bid in 2031. With all the things that the U.S. is getting, it would almost maybe sometimes look like we are getting favoritism from FIFA. You know, we're going to have the Copa America. We're going to have the Men's World Cup. We got a lot of things going on over the next few years. And it just seems like if we got the next bid, it would almost seem like we were getting special treatment. And I'm wondering if they might have gotten some word and FIFA wanted to go in a different direction. And it just looks better to pull out than to be denied. And since they might have had that information and then using the way their statement reads, using experience from the things that they do have to make even a better bid going into the future, I think that's kind of what we're seeing because I don't think Brazil had the greatest Men's World Cup when they had it. It was a great on the field. It was really good. The performances were good, but like the things you heard coming out of Brazil, the travel and all the stuff and families having to deal with worrying about crime and stuff in Brazil, I don't think they would have resourced the United States or the Mexican Federation. Germany, Belgium, that sounds like a good, a good place to hold the World Cup. But that my interpretation of it all was they got some information telling them that it was a better way to go for 2031.
Yeah, Brazil held their Men's World Cup in 2014, so it's been 10 years now. That's kind of crazy, 10 years since Brazil had the Men's World Cup. Time is flying by. I agree. I do think, it's 50-50 down the middle, in my opinion. I think it's a good decision because, to your point, like, separate it out. There's probably a lot of things we're not privy to, as into what's happening between FIFA, U.S. Soccer, and Mexico. But also, if they were to have the 2027 World Cup right after the men's 2026, so much infrastructure would already have been built. So many people and like the momentum of soccer in the States just continues to grow and grow and grow. And my fear now that if they wait until 2031, which is 4 years after that, does the momentum of soccer come down just a little bit? And I think it could. Right now, we're in a really fragile spot with NWSL. USL Super League is starting later this year. MLS continues to grow more and more and more. U.S. Soccer, obviously, the U.S. Women's National Team seems to kind of be hitting their stride, getting a new head coach in Emma Hayes. But I don't know. I think if they don't get that 2027 World Cup, and now that they don't, some of that momentum will come back down. When you look at the background, Scotty, because obviously you've been following the game a lot longer than I have in these World Cups and the trajectory of how the game grows in different countries because they host the World Cups. Do you see that as an issue?
I do. And I think that's selfishly as the American fan. And we're right to think it. We're right to think that because the MLS is growing, and I think it's no one would be surprised to know that it's messy. What he's doing and the fans that he's bringing to stadiums and the the eyes that he puts on the American game. The women with the new coach, the women at times we failed in the last World Cup, and we know how resilient this team is and how they come back from it and how much better they get whenever they hit a bump in the road. So
Mhm.
we can look at it as, will it dip? Because it always goes through its ebbs and flows. And I think it will dip. Are we going to be ready for the dip and to make sure that we can bring it back up to where it needs to be, so that at 2031, all eyes are back on the U.S. and this is the place to be, and this is where soccer has grown to. And I think we can do it. We just have to be real strategic as a country of how we go about doing that. Because you look at, we had the 94 World Cup, and part of that was to get that bid was to have a league within 2 years, and 96 is when MLS starts, and that was all part of the process. And look at how long it's taken us to get where we're at now. That's on the men's
Right.
side. The women's side, I don't think we'll have that big of an issue because there's more eyes on the women's side. The young girls and the families that go out to these games, and the fan bases that follow their NWSL teams, and I think is going to happen soon with the Super League. I think it's going to be okay. But if we would have got that bid before the 2027, I don't think they would have had a chance to dip. I think the energy that's going to be in this country the next couple of years, because of all the events that we're hosting, and they're big events, I think it's going to be, it would have been a great thing to just keep it going, and it would have helped it grow. Now you're going to have to do some work to make sure that within those 4 years after that, we don't let it fall, because the Messi effect is going to be gone. He's going to have retired
Yeah.
by then. So we're going to have to do a lot of work to keep the flow going in the right direction. And we're not going to have the Messi to do it. We're not going to have these certain things that have gotten the eyes on the leagues right now.
And now 2031 isn't even promised. So US Soccer and Mexico take themselves out of this situation, which is one that maybe we could all kind of be convinced that we would have gotten it if we stayed in this 2027 bid. But 2031, US Soccer, Liga MX, NWSL, USL Super League, they'll kind of have to continue to go up and up and up, build these stadiums. CPKC in Kansas City has made a massive impact on the game. And I think that's the standard that the leagues are going to have to continue to uphold, is better stadiums, better everything across the board for these teams, and making sure that the best coaches are coming into the States and into Mexico if they want 2031.
And players. I think that the key
Players
is,
too.
like, you look at the NWSL this year, and again, it's a league. I think Rose Lavelle said it best this weekend, is that's the NWSL, and that's why we love it, because anything can happen at any time. But what we're seeing this year is no one's hit their stride yet in the NWSL, really. And even the teams that have hit their stride, they're playing certain teams that are brand new and trying to find their stride. But because of all these new players, and they're not just new players, but they're new great players that we already know are great from their past. So they're bringing in the better players you bring in, the more eyes are going to be on you, the better the league's going to be. And I think they need to continue to do that, because on the women's side, they are bringing in the Messis. They do have them here, and they continue to search and bring them in. And to me, it's like when I watch any trades or anything go down in the NWSL, I always think, man, something's coming. Something's coming in Angel City to get rid of those two players.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Something's coming. So, like, you get real excited, whereas there's transitions sometimes that go on in the MLS, and you're like, oh, that's a money cut. That's a roster spot for a future, maybe, if we need it. But you know what I mean? But when a move happens in the NWSL, I'm always like, there's something behind this. They don't just release these players like this. And because you're giving them to a team that, even if they're in 14th at this time of the season, could be in first by the end. Because like I said, no team to me really has hit their stride, because we're all trying to figure ourselves out with all of the changes, whether they're coaching changes, player changes, formation changes, style of play changes. Like, the league is really growing in all terms. Like, Washington's going to be more of a combination play and keep the ball in possession play than over the top where they were. Courage have already done it. Houston's going to a 3-back to press the game, to play high, which is costing them right now. But they're bringing in defenders to change and manipulate the way they play with a new coach who has different philosophies. So The
Yeah.
NWSL has the opportunity to do it, but they're going to have to ramp it up because there's going to be that lull after all these tournaments end in the US.
Right. So the 2026 World Cup is going to be the Men's World Cup. And then there's going to be a break, potentially 5 years before the United States gets the World Cup back. So we'll keep keeping our eyes on this story. I think it's definitely a developing story. There might be more coming out on why they made this decision, but also will be interesting to see who gets it. Brazil, Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany. I want to see it in Belgium, Germany, and Netherlands. I've never been there. I've never been to Brazil either, but I feel like that would be a really fun place to watch games. The culture of it would be different, and it's in 3 different countries, and fans can have the experience just kind of traveling all over Europe in the summers. What
Yeah,
about you?
I
Do you
lived in
prefer one
I
over
lived
the
in
other?
France, and I think it's really cool how just by train you can travel to another country and you're there within
I
like
know.
here's like I could drive 5 hours and I'm still in North Carolina. Like I haven't even gotten to another state. We're over
Yeah.
there, so like you can travel into another country and okay, now you have this type of food to eat, and this is how they think about the game, and it's similar, but it's also different. And I think that'll be a real cool experience for the fans to be
Right.
in a place like that where of course Brazil is a huge soccer country, but Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany just some really cool places to be in the summer. The weather's
Mhm.
going to be great, and then just the way you could travel around the countries and be places. I think it's really cool and interesting how fans could get around.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to see how this one ends up playing out. But I'm cheering on the Belgium, Germany, Netherlands combination. Scotty touched on the fact that Angel City traded away 2 big players and Paige Nielsen to Houston, who they desperately needed her, and they traded away Amadine Henri, one of their sixes, to Utah the other week. There's a lot of changes. We're headed into match day 7, and teams are still trying to figure out their flow. Scotty touched on the fact that the team sitting at the bottom, like Seattle, might end up being a champion or in the championship again this upcoming season, rather this season. So we just never know. But right now, Gotham's it's sitting at the bottom alongside Seattle. 2 teams were in the final last season. Which team do you see having long-term success this year, ending up maybe in that final game?
Uh, I don't think Seattle has a chance. I
Maybe.
think
I
it's
mean, they're
Gotham.
they're missing Jordan Heitema, which I think is like one of the biggest keys to them. Granted, they can't find multiple goal scorers, and I don't think she's necessarily the answer. But I give them grace in the fact that Heitema's not been playing.
So I think in the past for Seattle, a lot of the teams played a similar style that Seattle plays. They play very direct. They play sometimes over the top, and they've had great players. Don't get me Fishlock's great. She's still there. King, an NC State grad is really good. But they had Lavelle. They had Rapino. They've had these players that could individually stop problems. And they don't have these players anymore. And the teams in the league are adapting to a different style of play where there's more possession based, there's more counter movements, there's more breaking lines. And so in doing so, they're also better set defensively for Seattle style when they don't have the ball. And I think that's really what we're seeing with Seattle is they really don't have answers of how to break teams down. They go into their game like 50-50 to me. I always call them 50-50 players. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And that's kind of what Seattle, like they never know. Are we going to win today or are we going to lose today? And they don't know. Whereas I feel when Portland walks into a game, they think they're going to win. They know how they're going to do their thing. They're going to play their way. And that's Portland only in, I think they're in 7th right now or something. But they've moved up dramatically in the last couple of games. Gotham, man, that's just a brand new team coming off a championship. So you have some of the players that are maybe there, maybe even some of the staff that were there last year have that hangover, that championship hangover. Then you have brand new players coming in and some of the brand new players that, okay, this is going to be our stalwart. This is going to be our back. Then there's an injury. Rose Lavelle has finally got onto the field. So she hasn't even had time to train. So like they're all learning each other and some are learning with this championship hangover that they had last year and things are different and they're not used to it. And that's why right now, Gotham, I'm way less worried about than if I was in Seattle. Seattle to me seems like they just don't seem to have any answers. They're not playing terrible soccer, but they're not playing winning soccer either. And that's just not, I'm not just saying based on the results. That's just the style of play. And just like
Yeah.
when you look at their demeanor on the field, there's not a lot of confidence that we're going to get this W today. It's we
Yeah.
hope. And I always tell players, hope in soccer is actually a bad word. You don't want to hope. You want to know. You want to know what you're going into. You want to be prepared. And I'm not saying they're not prepared, but it almost looks like that.
Yeah, I think we'll kind of switch it around because you jumped into our third segment, and we'll go to why is Gotham not getting those results to start the season. And I think to your point, that's fair. Rose Lavelle just hitting the field for the first time against Racing Louisville and having the game tying goal. Last week, this Gotham side had 8 injuries. 8. That is a lot of players to have on the bench. And their head coach, and Juan Carlos Amorós, continues to touch on the fact, like, we don't have that continuity. We haven't had a ton of time to practice together. Astaire, for the beginning half of the beginning of the season, was their only option going forward. She was the one they were trying to just get the ball into, and every team knew that, and it was easy to stop. So I think now that they have Lynn Williams, she adds an effect. And even though I don't think Lynn is necessarily this insane player in the attack by herself, she draws attention away from players like Astaire and now Rose Lavelle. So I think now that Rose is back, Emily Sonnet's in the mix, and she's helped out, I think, with some confidence in the midfield as well. It'll kind of lessen the blow to maybe Tierna Davidson, who went out with an injury against Washington 2 weeks ago, was out against Racing this past week. So I feel like this Gotham side just can't catch a break. They bring in all these new pieces. They make this roster that looks like it's going to be absolutely lethal, and it just doesn't play out in the way that they expect it to. It's almost like Kansas City last season. They brought in Dabinia, DiBernardo, Gautrat came on, and all these players ended up being injured for a really long time, and they sat at the bottom of the table. And look at them now. All these injuries are back, and they've added some key players. So I think there's a side to NWSL that just ebbs and flows, and you just never know what's going to happen with injuries. And it makes it really one of the funnest leagues to watch, because any week can be any team's week.
Yeah, and I agree with Gotham with not only injuries, and even if you took all the injuries away, they would be in trouble, because remember, the She Believes Cup ran right through preseason.
Right.
And all the players that Gotham picked were national team players, and a lot of them played in the She Believes Cup. So, like, they weren't even in preseason. And then you're logging minutes at another place where you're training, but you're playing games and you're getting knocks, and then you come back. And, I switched teams a couple times as a pro, and when you switch teams or get a big contract, man, you want to prove your worth. So sometimes you're doing extra, more than you should be. Instead of just playing your game and letting the game come to you, you're forcing the issue. And I think a little bit that's what we're seeing in Gotham, with some of the players doing more than they should, and just instead of finding their role and how it all fits. And again, it's early days, but that to me, that's one of Gotham's biggest problem is this is a brand new team, and it's hard to be a brand new team. And then you have the expectations because you just won a championship from the fans, from the NWSL fan base. Like, okay, now, we look at all these national teams. So, like, you have these expectations on, and then when there's a little hiccup or a slip, then that self-doubt starts to creep in for you as a player. And that's one of the hardest things. And that's where we'll see how good this staff is, because they're going to have to put the confidence back in them through training sessions, through film sessions, through talking with players. And I think Gotham they didn't just bring in young players, they brought in veteran superstars. And I think that'll be one of the big helping points for them as this season starts going a little bit more forward.
We always talk about how the superstars need help from the non-superstars who really make the team go. Is there one player in particular on this Gotham side you've really enjoyed watching who wasn't the big superstar coming in, but has helped this team and this engine at the beginning?
I really think Gotham is a team of superstars, and I think that's kind of where the little bit of the problems is. Like, to me, when I watch them, like, Neiswanger seems still like the young rookie, even though we know what she can do and how good she is, but just based on her age compared to the ages of the players around her, I think that she's a player that we know what we're going to get from her every day, day in and day out. She's always going to play. She's always going to be a 7 out of 10 to me. And if she does better than that, then that's a bonus. And that's a great thing to have. But for me, it's just there's so much going on and so many moving parts. And that's really, really hard when you're on a team, especially a championship team, because you get so tight making the run and you're missing
Right.
these pieces, or people get traded away or people retire. Like, that's hard on a team. That's really hard on a team. And then some of those were their leaders, some of the ones that had the talks and the team meetings and ran the things, and they don't have those players anymore. So it's who can do it, and it's probably a Crystal Dunn or a Rose Lavelle or a Davidson, but they're brand new and they might not feel that they have that right just yet, especially when they're coming off injuries and haven't even been on the field yet. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, to me, it's like that's where the coaching staff has to step in and be like, this isn't normally my role, but I'm going to have to do it now, or I'm going to have to talk Rose Lavelle or Crystal Dunn through it to give them the acknowledgement that you have the right. You have earned the right from all your years of playing. Don't worry that you're brand new here. Or it
Right.
could be a
And
Lynn
that
Williams, but I don't know if that's her, is that her personality?
Right. Well, it's funny you bring that up because Juan Carlos Amorós spoke on the fact that Tierna Davidson was actually voted as the team captain, one of the potential team captains. And because of injuries and everything that's happened in the beginning of the season, she's stepped into that team captain role. And now that she's out with an injury for who knows how long, I thought it was just an interesting comment that she is still so young, new to this team, and yet all these players really respect her and want her to be that leader. I think that also gives her that confidence, and that's what Gotham wants from her, is just to continue to build her, and they see her as a long-term center back on this squad. So it's really cool to kind of hear how she was one of those players voted, not Neely Martin or Delaney Sheehan or other players who have been on this team for a long time, but a player who has come in and is already, really well respected by her peers.
Yeah, and
So
she
we'll
also
see.
has that position where she has to communicate. So you're always
Yeah,
hearing her voice. And that
true.
helps you as a player. I was a center back. So for me, one that was always communicating and organizing. And I don't really feel that I'm a captain. I was a leader. A captain has some roles that they have to do where they have to be nice. And I'm not always wanting to be nice to teammates sometimes if they're doing things wrong, or referees. So like I never felt
Right.
as myself as a captain. I always thought I was a leader of a team. I think I was sometimes like the third captain. At the end of my career, I was a little bit more mature, and I think I captained my last 2 years as a player. But that position gives that authority basically because they always are hearing your voice. So when you're in the locker room, they almost come to you because he's going to say something because he always says something, or she's going to
Mhm.
talk. She's always the one talking. So I think that helps too, based on the position she plays.
I'm hoping to see her back out on the pitch more, and I'm hoping to see more of these injuries come off the injury list because Gotham has such a high ceiling. Obviously, losing Midge Purse the rest of the season is a massive bummer. She was a big piece to their win last season. But again, Gotham did a great job in the offseason bringing in some pieces in case all of this happened, and they're in the position that's worst case scenario for them, and they're still fighting, they're clawing away and getting points out of some of these games. So we'll see how Gotham continues to develop. Outside of Gotham, though, what teams do you see, or what in particular team do you see having long term success since it only is match day 7?
Yeah, to be honest, and I mean they're sitting in first, but Kansas City just looks like
Can't
a
deny it.
juggernaut. Like they just look. And the other day I was watching their game, and Dabinia got subbed in, and the announcers were talking about, well, does she fit? They're playing so good without her. Does she fit? And then they gave credit, like, come on, it's Dabinia. So, like, where wouldn't she
Right.
fit? My thing for Dabinia, and if I was the coaching staff or even the players, I'd be like, hey, just be you. Don't think you have to prove anything. Man, they have positions. They're everywhere. Rodriguez in the back is a perfect fit. Their midfield, Mason in the back, up top, Chawinga, and then DiBernardo. I mean, they're
Hmm.
just so good, like all over the place. The one thing, if you're gonna knock them, is they've given up 14 goals. Yeah, but
Right.
they just attack so much that they're going to be susceptible to getting scored on. They have a great goalie. They like all the pieces are there, and then their bench is all the pieces are there. So my thing is, and I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's a lot easier to correct defensive problems than it is when you're not scoring. But they're scoring. They're dangerous. They're dangerous. Who, like, it's like pick your poison. Who do you want to try to stop? Okay, maybe you can stop Chawinga, maybe. But now you've left 3 other players they're just as lethal and just as dangerous going forward, you have to leave them unaccounted for at times. And that's what now that Dabinia is healthy, like she can't force things. She just has to play into just be you and play into the mix. The other thing is that's really, really interesting. And I wish we could get all the information all the time. But Andonovski looks like a completely different coach than he did at the World Cup. At the World Cup, he looked like he wasn't making the calls. He looked quiet. He looked nervous. And maybe it was the event, but I don't think so just when you look at his career and what he's gone through. But he's got this different energy. When they come over to the sidelines, the player they're engaged with them, whereas at the World Cup, they were getting their drinks, they were looking away, they were talking to each other. When they come to the sidelines in Kansas City, they are looking to him for information of how we can keep going and how we can get the results. And I think that's super interesting to see because everyone was so down on him after the World Cup. And he's come in and said, maybe it wasn't my fault. Maybe there was things I weren't in control of with that national team. That's just me looking at it as a fan because here he is saying, here's my team. Here's the team I wanted. Here's the players I went out and got. And I'm going to play them like this. They have leadership. They have veteran leadership. They have youth. They have hard-nosed working players. They have pure skill. They have speed. They have everything you need. Now it's, can we maintain it? And I don't see why they couldn't.
Yeah, Kansas City 20 goals to begin this season. And I think similar to what I was saying with Gotham, where they have a bunch of superstars, Kansas City has a lot of superstars and players who can score. But they also have players who have been, I think, underestimated in this league for a while. Alexis Spanstra, one of those players who has started a lot of these games for Kansas City. And she's been such a good partnership next to Bia and next to Chawinga because she doesn't draw necessarily all the attention, but she's so good at when she does receive the ball, finding a way to get it to the main goal scorers. And it's that combination again in the midfield. Labonte goes out with an injury. They bring in Bailey Feist out of free agency. Not a player that anyone really talks about, but she's been able to get the job done and do her job well in a double pivot in the six in the midfield. I mean, you go all the way back even to the back line, which is where a lot of the question marks are around Kansas City. They're giving up these goals. Why? But you have Ellie Wheeler, a rookie, who is so fast and she's so athletic that she can get up and down consistently and help out when need be. And then last year, Kansas City took a lot of knocks to their back line. Gabrielle Robinson had to step up and be a big player. This year, it's paid off. You can see she plays a little bit more confidently on that back line. So I think it's that combination of Andonovski and Cami Levin, their general manager, who went out in the offseason and said, okay, how do we want this team to play and how do we want to build? And did a great job of not just getting, big superstars, but making sure players, if Dabinia goes out, who's going to be that player coming in? We're not going to have a million Dabinias, a million Chawingas, and we don't want that. And I think that's why Kansas City is having so much success and separating themselves so far from the rest of the league right now is because it's like a plethora of players that play so well together. And they look like they're having a great time too.
Yeah, I think you can see when, and it would be great to go into Kansas City and get to talk with their management team and said, is this what you were planning? Because, man, it sure does look like, okay, we're going to go out. We're going to spend tons of money on offensive superstars last year. And they did it. And saying, we don't want to lose, but we'll understand if it happens because we're building a brand new stadium. So we're giving these people this great venue to come to and enjoy. But it's not going to be enjoyable if we don't put the right product on the field. So, I would think even if you got Kansas City and you made them a juggernaut defensively and they were winning 1-0, and it was just them defending, even though they would be getting the results, it wouldn't be as much fun. They've made this place like the Kansas City Chiefs. You score 40, we'll score 50. I think they just have this mentality of let's let it be enjoyable for everybody. Let's let everybody have a good time. Don't come here and only cheer once a game. We want you to cheer 7 times a game, 4 times a game. We want the smoke to go off, the cannons to go off. It's about excitement. That's who we are. That's what we're building. Now we have to do it the right way so we don't lose. And that's why I said I think Andonovski, the way it looks, is he's going to figure out their little defensive hiccups, and it's going to be something that they're going to have to come up with because they do attack so much that they can be countered because the
Right.
spaces are available to them because of the way they attack. But I like I said, that's a lot easier of a fix than not being able to put the ball in the back of the net. You can fix defensive problems a lot easier than you can fix offensive problems. And sometimes it just comes
Totally.
down to effort, and they seem to have the team that is willing to work.
Yeah, you make a great point with the stadium, and I think that's something that can't be overlooked. And that goes back to our comment on this World Cup bid: is you put these players in these beautiful stadiums that people want to go and spend their weekend afternoons at, and they show up and they want to play hard and they want to be a part of this atmosphere. They don't want to be traded to another club because they have their own stadium. And I'm sure alongside the stadium comes a lot of other perks, like their training facility is beautiful in Kansas City as well. I think it's this combination of so many things that Kansas City has done right between their ownership, between the coaching staff, and even the players themselves, like their personalities, their demeanors. They really fit into Kansas City and what Kansas City is all about. So it's that personality piece alongside the player piece that's making this so fun. I am so thrilled. Like I called the Portland Kansas City game, first game of the season. Had no idea what to expect, but 9 goals in that game,
Yeah.
5 from Kansas City. I was just like, wow, if this is what it's going to be, and they've continued to do that, they've scored multiple goals in every single game except for the Gotham game where they only had one. Like, what an exciting team to watch. What an exciting team to be a part of. So
Right.
Scotty's going with Kansas City. Yeah, go ahead.
You want to buy tickets when you know you're going to see goals.
Right.
Like as a fan, you want to go. Like you want. Listen, I think the
Well,
Courage
isn't
plays a
that the
great
biggest
brand of
issue
soccer.
with isn't that the biggest issue people have with soccer is they're like, "Oh, we don't see enough goals. There's not enough goal scoring." Well, they fixed your problem.
Right. That's right. Like I always tell the kids here, like we're Americans. What do we like? 3-pointers, dunks, touchdowns,
Yeah.
home runs. Like we like the scoring aspect. A lot of people, if they're not soccer fans, you say why? Well, you don't like soccer. Why not? It's always the same. It's boring. Like there's
Right.
so much going on, but to the common American fan who's not a soccer fan, unless there's goals, nothing's going on. The same with
Right.
like my daughter says, "Oh, baseball's so boring," and I'm always like, "There is so much going on in baseball. You have no idea. You have no idea. Like
No.
I understand, but like watch
No.
when a certain batter comes up, the entire outfield pulls out these little sheets. They like the ball here. They like it this. The pitchers, the catchers, they know how people like to hit. They shift the infield and stuff. Now they can't do the ultra shift, but there's so many mind things going on. Same with a lot of people that are soccer fans don't like Italian soccer because it's so defensive minded, and it's
Hmm.
a strategic. How do we win the game defensively, not offensively, for a lot of times in Italy? And soccer fans think the Italian game is boring. I think the Italian game is amazing because it's so thought out and meticulous tactically that you got to figure out each team tactically to beat them.
You're also a defender, so that tracks, like you would be a fan of Italian
I am,
soccer.
but I'm a defender who likes to go offensive. And in
Okay.
Italy, a lot of times they'll just sit and hold and park the bus. They don't care
Right.
and they'll counter. A lot of times I defend more like a Pep Guardiola defensive style where we defend all together anywhere we want on the field to win the ball back because if we have the ball, we can score kind of a thing.
Right.
Whereas the Italians, they don't really care about the ball. It seems at times. They care
Yeah.
more about shape. Don't let no gaps, no lanes, slide, shift. They come up with different defensive strategies all the time that change the game and make the game better and then get adapted in different countries with the different styles of play that they have. And
Yeah.
that's what here in the US, you know what was really big when I was playing? Indoor. There was 3-pointers, there was 2-pointers, there was penalties, there was shorthanded goals, there was power plays. There was like games were like 35 and the stands were packed because it was exciting, lots of goals. And I
Yeah.
understand that as a fan watching on TV, I want to see goals too. I want to see the breakdowns and the punishment for them and the celebrations. So I get it.
Right.
And that's what Kansas City is giving us as fans is here's this high prolific offensive juggernaut with speed and skill and finesse. And it shows up every game. And that's what's
Hmm.
exciting about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's this consistency. I think what we've gotten out of Kansas City in this current side is they're just consistent every single game. So I'm hoping it continues. I'm hoping you're right, that this is a team that will have success at the end of the season because they're doing everything right from the jump. For me, I went with Racing Louisville. It's a side where they've only had one win, but it was a really big win over Utah the other week. 5 goals from so many different goal scorers. And I think one of the biggest pieces to Racing Louisville this season is Taylor Flint. She has come in and operated as a double six next to Jalen Howell, who is a good player, but I think one of the biggest mistakes for her is she just not quick enough to be in that six by herself and needed somebody who could help her cover space. And Flint has just added that so successfully. And that's a lot of credit to their head coach, Bev Yanez, in her first year for Racing, how she noticed the small things and has made those adjustments and really is sticking to the game plan, knows that progress isn't going to happen right away. This team got 4 ties to start the season, but they continue to get better and better. The other thing that Yanez did really well was the rookies. I mean, they have Alexa Barr, Emma Sears, and then they brought in Raylan Turner. 4 goals and 3 assists between the 3 of them to start the season. That was one of Racing's big issues last season, was scoring goals, or they would end up in ties because they wouldn't do the defensive work. And now that they have Taylor Flint to help with the defensive side, and they've got all these really fast, athletic, can run for years rookies in the attack, it's really helps them out. And I think Bev Yanez has just brought this newfound energy, life to Lynn Family Stadium. And it's been really fun to watch. The other piece that I'll add to this team who kind of, I think they'll have success as the season goes on, is Uchenna Kanu. 4 goals this season. She's at the top of the Golden Boot race. Last year, she wasn't doing like any of the defensive work that they needed her to do. And now she's doing that and scoring goals. So I think there's just a lot of different factors to Racing this season, including what Yanez has done. And I think that's a lot of credit to her, that I think they'll have a lot of long-term success if they stick with their game plan.
I agree on all your points. Except for one, only one a little bit. But
which one?
My thing with Louisville is it's really easy to go to practice when you haven't lost. So they only have one win, but they have 0 losses. So like, okay, I can get up, I can wake up and I can go to practice and I know we're going to get these goals. These goals are going to come. We're going to start getting wins, not ties. And when you watch them play, they have this better energy this year about they know what they're trying to accomplish and they trust the information they're getting to accomplish what they're trying to do. As far as Jalen Howe, I personally think she can cover the ground. I don't know that she thinks she can. And that's where the problem lies. She seems to be too safe in her own mind, which I think causes problems and sits too deep. She likes to stay attached to the back line instead of staying attached to both lines. And she sits. So the double pivot this year for them is working because the double sixes, they kind of offset on each other on angles. And that's what's helping them stay more compressed as a complete unit as a team. Whereas when Hal played the 6 by herself, there was a gap between the 10, the 8, or the 2 10s and the front line, where then you could break. When you broke the line, you were basically, because Hal was sitting so deep, if you broke the line, you're now basically going against their back line of 5. But it's still, you're so far into their side of the field, their half of the pitch, that it's easier to break down. And then when you win it, it's hard to maintain possession because you're not connected with all your players from the back. And I think that's what's kind of helping. I will say this. Sometimes there's players that come along and they're pretty good in college. They're okay. They're just meant to be pros. And that Emma Sears is a pro soccer player. She's a beast. I think she scored 3 goals last year in college. How did that girl only score 3 goals? I
have no idea.
When she becomes a starter and establish herself, and I think it's going to happen soon, I agree. I think Louisville is going to find goals and not give up goals because they've always been pretty good defensively. They have Ursig back there. They have Pickett back there. They have a great goalie. They have what they need defensively. It was always, where are their goals going to come from if it's not DeMello? Because Kanu wasn't scoring like this. She
Hmm.
had, like I told you, I went to the Louisville game last year. I went to a Louisville game and I watched her in warmups and I was like, well, how are they going to stop this girl? She's killing, like everything went top corner. Everything went where she volleys, one timers, little trick, little touches. Like she was amazing. And then the game came and it was like she couldn't find the game or she was trying to do it all on her own. Whereas that's not
Yeah.
happening now. Like when Sears gets the ball, she reminds me of Rodman. Like, whoa, here it comes. Good luck. The
Yeah.
defenders get on their start backpedaling, and she runs at you. She's meant for this league. I would hope it could continue to grow and get better and better because she's something that, if it translates, could be a national team player.
I was about
That's
to
how
say, do you
that's
think
how
this is a
good she
potential for
looks
her?
when she comes on the field. And like she changes the game, and she's been coming off the bench. So that's where I think
Right.
if once she establishes herself and really gets the pace of the game and understands all the teams, and it's not so brand new to her. Like I said, there's in every sport, there's some, because college a lot of time is you got to play to the system. You have to. And in the
Hmm.
pros, there's a system, but you're plugged in with your talents to help the system, not necessarily you have to play to the system. So
Right.
I think she's one of those players that is meant to be, she was always meant to be a pro, and the system in college didn't necessarily hurt her, but it didn't let her showcase her pure talents. Or
Yeah.
she was the one everything was game planning for to stop, whereas you can't do that to a rookie and you can't do that to pros because there's so many good players out there on the field. And that's so for me when I watched, I was like, Emma Sears, watch out. She's gonna be like a nice Swanger, like rookie, like wow, like where did this player kind of come from in a sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's only match day 7, so we don't know. I mean, to your point, Emma Sears coming out of the Big Ten, a league that's known to be really physical, play fast, play. It's shocking to know that she didn't have this huge. She wasn't highly touted coming out of Ohio State, and here she is making a massive impact coming off the bench. And that's the other piece too that we don't know about Sears yet because we've only seen so much. Is she a better player coming off the bench and making that spark change? And maybe her starting a game, it'd be hard for her to find her footing. Maybe she doesn't tactically have the ability to do that, doesn't know how to start a game, but she could sit on the bench, see how the game evolves, and then make an impact right away. I think that's something certainly to watch for with Sears. But if she continues down this route, I mean, how does Emma Hayes pass up a look? I have no idea.
Yeah, she looks like she can beat you skillfully, she can beat you with speed, and she can beat you
Mhm.
with power. Like, and again, like that didn't really help us out in the last World Cup. So does it
Right.
translate on the national team stage? I don't know, but like just like every time I see her play, every time I've watched Louisville, like I'm waiting for her to get in after the first time I saw her. I'm like, okay, can she do that again? And she does it again. Like it's the same
Right.
player every time she steps on the field. It's like, well, here it comes. And the game changes. The game goes from Louisville sitting in their half sometimes to they're on the forefront. Or if they're already on the forefront, they stay on the forefront. Like it doesn't affect the game. She does her job coming off the bench. Just that what she does to me is like, as if I was coaching, I'd be like, well, how do I keep her off the field? That's
Right.
the question. Like, and for me, with them not losing but not having wins, I'm still looking for changes because I want wins. We need wins. I don't need
Right.
1 point. I need 3 points.
And that's the perk that racing has found themselves in is they do have that depth, and Yanez has the ability to kind of change things around, see what that best combo is. I see what you're saying about Sears maybe like being a lot of what the US has had in the past, like maybe one of the reasons why we had a downfall in the World Cup. But she is good at connecting. She'll drive the ball in line, and she's really good at crossing and connecting in the box, which is what we didn't get from the Alex Morgan, Sophia Smith when they're playing wide.
Right. They're looking to get their own goals. She's looking to get the team a
Yeah.
goal. That's the best way I can describe of what there's the little difference is she's not beating a player down the line to get inside to score. She will, but she knows her job is to facilitate. And I think sometimes our players, because of where they play on club when they get to national team and they're the goal scorers for their club, it's kind of at times it's hard to come out of that mentality also
Yeah.
because you know that that's what's getting you picked. what you're doing in club soccer is what's getting you picked for the national team. So you're like, why wouldn't I not do that? That must be why they brought me here. And that sometimes, if there's not good communication through the coaching staff to the players, then they don't change the way they play, because Trinity Rodman can cross it. Lynn Williams can cross it. Swanson can cross. Like, they can do this. They're good enough players to do this. They've always been being asked for the most of the year to score. So it's hard to come out of that mentality as a goal scorer to then say, well, now I'm a facilitator. So that's where, when we pick these teams, I think the connections and the chemistry is such a big thing that we just can't pick, let's just pick all the best players or the fastest players. Like, a lot of has to do with the chemistry and how they work together and how they see the game and read the game as such.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. I think Sears is a player that we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on here, along with a lot of other rookies. I mean, touched on Raylan Turner and Alexa Barr with Racing Louisville, but there's been so many fun ads. Hutton in the midfield in Kansas City, just to go down. This Midwest teams are certainly, a side that we've been really excited to watch. But there are other clubs that are continuing to build and adding new pieces. Example, Angel City. I feel like they've got this hole. They traded away 2 big players, which means they have cash. What is Scotty's side going to do? I have no idea, but it's going to be really fun to see. They got to be doing something.
If it is to get Kristen Press back on the roster and her salary, I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that Kristen Press gets back, but you said I'm a big Henri fan. I just thought she was really good. I think she's going to help Utah. But I think you had some young players in Angel City that could use her leadership. I think what's her faces look good, Fuller, but she could use that little bit of leadership and understanding, because even though Fuller's more of an 8-10, the way she's playing and what she's being asked to do is almost like a 6, just higher up the pitch. And I think that would have helped with Henri behind her, or in trainings even. So, but again, Angel City's a team that put something together, and they knew what they were doing. They were building a fan base, and they have a great fan base, but they went out and got high name profile players and got them real quick. And it's been okay, but it hasn't gotten them the results I think they really wanted to. And now they've shifted back to, okay, we kind of have our fan base. I don't think they're going anywhere. We've established ourselves. We are a great behind the scenes. Our management team has done an unbelievable job. So now let's put the pieces together. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with the players they're releasing and letting go, and the money they're getting available, and the roster spots they're getting available. So now it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, because like I said, when we asked about Portland a few weeks ago, I wasn't worried about it. And they just know how to run their business. They just know they needed a new voice. They needed a different energy on the sidelines. That wasn't saying Norris was a bad coach or didn't. So they kept him with the company. They moved him up. Now they look like, even on the field, it's just different. It doesn't look stale. It wasn't ever bad. It was just a stale feeling like, the same old. Let's just do what we. Now it's like same old, but with a little bit of vigor to it. And they're, like I said, they're a team like, man, they just know how to. They're just a great championship side.
It was weird to see Portland in that 14th spot there for a minute. Like, that is crazy and just shows you the growth of this league. But to your point, Portland knows how to get the job done. They know what changes need to be made when. They've been in this league forever. So they know when it's time, and they did it, and they've had a lot of success since. But yeah, I think there's so many fun storylines to continue to follow in the NWSL. That's going to do it this week for Straight from the Pitch. I don't have any yellow pennies. I guess I did make a prediction. I want to touch on it. It's not a yellow penny. It is a celebratory thing. Did not make a prediction that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift would be engaged by May. Well, it's May officially. We're releasing this episode on May 1st. So we'll be keeping our eyes on, do we see it happen? I don't know. I know she's going back on tour here in a few days. But I feel like maybe they might even be engaged already. There's rumors. Hey, they're still together. I feel like I can be right on this one. Any thoughts, predictions? Do you care?
No, I don't care at all, really. Good luck with that one. I will say this. It's not a yellow penny. It's not a yellow penny. But like I'm a big EPL fan. So like right now in the EPL, it's the end of the year. So there was a championship run with all these teams. So like
Hmm.
you're getting when they play, we're getting a Liverpool game. It's an isolated game. So that's the only game on TV, or it's an Arsenal game, or it's a Man City, and they're isolated most of the times. So like that's the only game you could watch. No other EPL games going. Or right now it's the end, so it's the relegation promotion time. So you're getting the relegation games that are super important. So like the importance of the game and the fans, you're going to watch this game, you don't have to worry about missing your team or missing because it's such a huge game. Why is Inter Miami playing at the same time as everybody else? Like it's a mistake, I feel like. Listen, I'm a Miami fan, so I get away with it, but if I wasn't a Miami fan and I'm I don't know, a Kansas City fan, I'm not watching Kansas City unless they're playing Miami because you can't miss
Yeah.
Messi. You can't miss him. What he's doing, and I was saying something with the kids I was coaching about how good he is. Like, you can't believe how good he is. And they're like, well, he's playing in the MLS. And I said, well, there's a lot of guys that have played in the MLS. Zlatan, David Beckham, Steven Gerrard, Pirlo, Frank Lampard, you name it. No one has done what he's doing. No
Right.
one has ever done what he is doing to the league. So like, why wouldn't they just give him his own time? Like Miami should get their own time slot. Like give them the 7:00. Even the NWSL, even though they're like half an hour off, like I can watch one game, get the vibe of the game, the energy of the game, and see if it's a good game, and then switch to the 7:30 game, watch that game for a little bit and say, okay, this one's not as exciting, not going to have, go back to the other game, catch the other
Yeah.
game at the end. And then there's the other day, like every game was basically at 7:30. Like nobody's watching anybody but Miami play. And then I
Right.
give Messi credit. It took him 25, 30 minutes to get used to the turf in New England. You could tell it was throwing off his passes. It was throwing off his touches. 35 minutes in, bam, game over. It just crushed it. But like, you're getting 72,000, 60,000. Like, that's good for our fans to see. Like, if you turn on a game in the MLS and you're like, holy moly, like Gillette is sold out. The Patriots aren't really
Yeah.
doing that last year. So now, like, if I'm just a novice fan that doesn't really know anything, I'm like, well, I got to watch more of these games because 70,000 people can't be wrong that they're all showing up to these games. So if you keep seeing, like, perception is reality. So for the fan that doesn't know or doesn't, if they see 70,000, 60,000, 80,000 in the stands, then they want to know what it's all about and they start watching the other games. And the league is much better this year. The
Yeah, for
foreigners
sure.
they have brought in have done so well for the league. So there's good games. Yes, there's a couple bad games here and there. It just determines basically the tactical setups of two teams that sometimes just don't mesh and makes the game ugly. But for the most part, the game has been really good. High flying. Portland's doing a good job with changing their style of play. Miami's ridiculous. You know, some of the same teams, the Galaxy are back doing good. Rui Puig is
Hmm.
amazing in the game. Like I just think like they're missing an opportunity to draw in more fans because they put all the games
Miami's
at the
fighting.
same time. And some people are like, oh, I'm going to watch my local team. Like, give Messi his own time slot. Just give him his own time slot.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And I think like we even saw that when ironically they went to Sporting and they played at Arrowhead, which is where the Chiefs play. And like how many fans showed up for that? I don't think it had its necessarily its own time slot, but it did have this whole like hoopla around it that made people tune in. So I like that. That's a good not necessarily yellow penny, but maybe an adjustment MLS. That could be
Yeah,
some
just
like
like
marketing
just know what
advice.
you have, know what you
Right.
got, man. And
Read the
he's
room.
like, it's not like we got Messi in the league and he sucks. Man, he's killing it. Like he's
Right.
killing it. Like some of the things he does is just like, like his touch is so clean and so perfect. And then like yeah, Busquets gave a really good ball on the goal. But I mean, he trapped it within an inch of himself because he only had 3 inches. Otherwise, it would have lost it. Like, so like what those guys are doing in Miami is just, it's so fun to watch. Like, introduce the American fan and like you have a deal with
Make it its
Fox.
own separate
Put it on
thing. Like,
Fox. Like, so like
yeah.
they're just clicking. They don't even have to go to Apple. Give them more Fox games. So it's like, then once you get people drawn in, then put them back on Apple. Like, just let the people see this spectacle that is Lionel Messi and everything that comes with it. Like from the fans running onto the fields, to the packed houses, to the goals, to the assists, to the energy of the other team because they're playing against Messi and they want to show and they know. Like I just think it's a missed opportunity.
No, I can see that for sure. I think MLS is working on some of those things. I think, gosh, but that's definitely a missed opportunity. Like if it's all going to be in one place, give everybody the good teams and the good players, obviously Messi, his own time slot. I like that. That's a good one. All right, well, that's going to do it here for Straight from the Pitch this week. We will not be back next week, but we're kind of in a position where we're just going with the flow. If there's anybody out there who loves to video edit, who could help us with the show, feel free to shoot us a DM. Would love to chat with you. But you can follow us on YouTube. You can watch us every single week. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, at SFTP Pod. And enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Have a great week.